So quantitative ethnography is first and foremost a research method. That means that it can be applied to any substantive topic in the learning sciences. Where it's particularly good, though, is when researchers have a large corpus of qualitative data. For example, in log files, extensive interviews, video recordings. These are things that we're seeing more and more in the learning sciences as people are able to collect more and more data about the students and teachers and other people that they're studying. In general, big data is becoming more important in education and, of course, more common in the learning sciences. The usual methods that people use to examine big data rely on finding statistical patterns. Quantitative ethnography lets research ground those patterns back in the data, but also find grounded claims and examine them at scale. That means while quantitative ethnography addresses many topics in the learning sciences, it aligns most closely where people are thinking about things like data mining, learning analytics, and ethnographic and qualitative methods. And it's particularly good for studying complex thinking and collaborative thinking, and in online and other data-rich learning environments. So the most definitive resource for learning about quantitative ethnography is a book that is happily called Quantitative Ethnography. The book talks in detail about the methods that are used in quantitative ethnography, including how to organize and segment data, how to validate codes, how to construct grounded models, and also how to use tools like epistemic network analysis. There are also papers on the website, quantitativeethnography.org, including worked examples of quantitative ethnographic analyses. Finally, that same website has links to tutorial videos, sample data sets, user guides, and of course, the tools of quantitative ethnography themselves. So the learning sciences is a field that grew out of a combination of computer science, psychology, and the study of education. And historically, learning scientists have been interested in the impact of computers on education, and more generally, what's worth learning and how students learn it. Quantitative ethnography connects directly to this agenda because it's a method to study how learning happens. What we're seeing today is an explosion of data about how students learn and what they're doing while they're learning it. At the same time, the things that students need to learn are changing. Students no longer need to understand how to answer simple questions of the kind that we can put on a bubble test. Students need to learn teamwork, deep understanding, and complex problem solving. These kinds of questions are why ethnography has long been a critical tool in the learning sciences. Qualitative methods let researchers study not just whether something happens, but how it happens. Not just whether students have learned something, but how they learned it. That's why quantitative ethnography is so important in the learning sciences. Quantitative ethnography lets researchers use qualitative approaches to understand learning in deep ways, but then also to quantify the results of those investigations to create models of how innovative pedagogies and complex thinking work. In other words, quantitative ethnography lets us be mathematically and conceptually rigorous about the study of learning without losing the nuances that are critical to understanding how learning happens. My recommendation about quantitative ethnography for students and early career researchers is actually to get in touch with Brendan Egan, who's one of the students in my lab and who is very good at giving people demos, answering questions, and helping them think about how to use quantitative ethnography with their own data. Beyond that, we have a mailing list that people can subscribe to, and they get updates about recent work in quantitative ethnography, papers that people have published, new methods, and so on. I also invite anyone to come visit us here in Madison. I do recommend if you come in the summer. The weather's better, and the beer tastes better when you're sitting on the terrace looking over the lake. I think my main recommendation, though, would be that it's never too early to start thinking about methods. Once you start working on a study or your dissertation, new methods tend to be destabilizing. They make you rethink things in a way that's more difficult than if you started thinking about them at the beginning. I think it's good to think about what questions you want to answer, what data you're going to collect, how you're going to collect the data, and to do all those things hand in hand with thinking about what sorts of methods you want to use. Quantitative ethnography connects directly to these students are learning in a data. I got it this time. It's going to go all the way through. This is it. It's the one. Come on, one take. One take. Computer.